Welcome to the Dad Nation podcast, where men go from good to great in their life and love. Now more than ever, our world needs strong, courageous, and compassionate men, because we believe that when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. Now, this movement is called Dad Nation, but ultimately this is for the wives, the children, and the generations to come, because we also believe that every wife and child deserves a father and a husband who is pursuing greatness. Now, my name is Mitchell Osman, and I am your host today for this podcast and every day, every episode. And I'm so humbled and I'm grateful that you've decided to spend your most precious resource, which is your time, with me today. So today we are going to be talking about the 6 traps that men fall into when trying to change. Why is it so hard to change? Why is it so hard to get the results that I want in life? Why do we get stuck in these ruts? Okay. Now, I feel like I am in a particular position to talk about this, because even though it may seem like I have some things figured out because I'm giving, I'm teaching this podcast episode, the only reason why I know is because I have struggled with so many different things in my life as well. And so I've struggled with anger management. I've struggled with, controlling my emotions. I've struggled with overeating. I've struggled with weight loss. I've struggled with insecurity. I've struggled with financially, you name it. Right? I've been there. Okay, so on my journey of overcoming these challenges and getting frustrated and winning and losing and winning and losing and studying psychology and understanding what makes us tick, I've come to understand some things that cause us to struggle to change in some of these areas. And I've boiled it all down to about 6 things. Now, perhaps there's more. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are 6 things that I think you should consider if you find yourself in a situation where you're struggling to change in a certain area. Okay, these traps are universal across all different things that we can struggle with, right? So as you're listening to this, all these different traps and these things we're talking about, I want you to apply it to your own life and be asking yourself, so before we even start, ask yourself, what is the area in my life that I'm having a hard time changing? What is the area of my life that I know that I can do better in, that I know that I can do more in, but yet for some reason I'm not? So for me, for example, I spent years working out, going to the gym, and then I go through these seasons. I'd yo-yo, right? So I'd spend 6 hours. I'd spend like 6 months, training super hard. I'd be eating super clean. And then all of a sudden something would happen and I'd fall off the map. And then I'd just be like binge eating. I'd just stop working out altogether. I'd pack on, 20, 30 pounds. And then I would, hit a certain weight. For me, I believe that was 220 pounds, 230 pounds. And then it would snap me back into reality. And I'd start that cycle again. I'd, pick up my gym membership. I'd start eating clean again. For the first 3 years of my marriage, I struggled with insecurity, certainly. I struggled with anger. I have a flash temper. I had a flash temper. I correct my language. And that I really struggled with. And I would be fine. And I would just blow up. And so I just could not understand why I found it so hard to change. And get control of my emotions, to get control over my eating, to get control over my disciplines, to get control over our finances. So trust me, friend, when I tell you I've been there in many ways. So if you're feeling like there are some struggles that you are going through right now, you are not alone. You are in good company, as they say. Now, I will start the episode with a bit of a disclaimer, okay? Some of what I'm going to say in this episode might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable because it's going to press a little bit. You may not feel comfortable with some of these questions I'm going to ask you. This episode, I'm certain, will not make me popular, but these things are the things that I needed to hear when I was struggling, and perhaps some of these things, one of these 6 things, is something that you need to hear today. And after you finish this episode and you're fully honest with yourself and you can say that you didn't fall into any of these traps, bravo, my friend. I would love to take you out for coffee and pick your brain on how you have mastered life because you were the first person that I have ever met to do so. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about, success, how we define it, and failure, right? Because now everybody has a different definition of success. And that's why this word is tricky. So I want you to be able to define success for you. Maybe it's financial, but maybe it's marital, maybe it's spiritual, maybe it is relational. What does success look like for you? And success really is just that you are living, the life that you have wanted in whatever way you have pictured it, right? But here's the great contrast between success and failure. Success is perceived to be this great mystery, but the secret is that there's actually no secret to it. But we'll get back to that. But on the flip side, failure, failing is very easy to do. All you have to do is cultivate a few bad habits and bide your time. And watch what happens when your life kind of slowly just diminishes, right? So for example, you just start watching a little bit more TV, or in your marriage, you stop writing those love notes to your wife, and before you know it, you stop holding hands, and then you stop saying I love you, and before you know it, you're trapped in this boring kind of sexless marriage, or maybe in your fitness or your physical life, you just simply start grabbing takeout on your way home from work. Just one cheeseburger here, one cheeseburger there. Before you know it, you got a habit. Maybe you get into the habit of just having a drink or two in the evenings after work just to take the edge off, And before you know it, you're 6 drinks in and you find it hard to get through a day without alcohol. It's a slippery slope, right? And so this is why we must be intentional. This is why we're going to talk about this today. But we find ourselves in this situation. Failure is so much easier than success. And here's the thing. Success isn't a gift. It isn't given. It's earned, right? So why is it so hard to change our ways and to see the success that we want in these areas? Why is it that we struggle? Why is it so hard to get the results that we want? So, as I said in this episode, I'm going to unpack the 6 traps that we often fall into as men. And if you're listening to this and you're a woman by chance, same thing applies to you, okay? This is just human stuff here we're talking about. So I'm going to jump straight into it. This episode is going to be a little bit shorter today. Okay, so number 1, as I had just alluded to, we struggle because failure is easier than success, right? It's always harder to hike up the mountain than it is to walk down, right? But it's never been easy. Now, it wasn't easy for your parents. It wasn't easy for your grandparents, and it won't be easy for you. I love in his book, 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson says this: failure is easy too. It's easier not to shoulder a burden. It's easier not to think and not to do and not to care. It's easier to put off until tomorrow what needs to be done today and drown the upcoming months and years into today's cheap pleasures. Man, ain't that the truth? Success, however you define it in whatever area of your life, must be earned. You see, you don't get the medal without running the race. And at its highest level, the secret to success in any area, whether it's financial, family, fitness, or in your future, whatever that case is, it's going to be unsexy and it's going to be anticlimactic. So for example, here are the 3 steps that you can take that's going to help you see success in these areas. This is kind of a sidebar, and we'll get into the rest of the traps. But number 1, you need to make goals that align with your core values, your passion, and your purpose. And we're going to get into that a little bit later in the episode. But this is important because if your goals don't resonate deeply with you, you will give up on them. And the goals have to connect and light a fire within you, because it's going to get boring and you're going to give up if it really doesn't connect to your why. Number 2, then make that goal and then reverse engineer the process, right? So start with making those larger goals, those mile markers, and then break down those mile markers into smaller, attainable weekly or monthly goals, and then break those small goals down into daily changes or new rhythms on how to get there, okay? Then number 3, consistently execute on these daily changes and these new rhythms and begin to stack wins. All right. The more wins will give you more motivation and more of a growing self-confidence because you're building rapport with yourself, which we've talked about in previous episodes. If you haven't, scroll to, I don't know, one of the earlier episodes about how to, crush your insecurities and grow in your self-confidence, where we really unpack this concept. And so what begins to happen is over time, you begin to achieve these monthly goals from your micro or macro daily consistency, right? Then your monthly goals will keep you on track to meet your bigger goals. And then as you prove that that's possible, you also prove to yourself that you are a man of your word, that you can be trusted, that you yourself can even trust that you will do the things you say you do. And then that's where your confidence begins to come back, to restore, and to become more motivated to change. You have to learn how to play the long game. So let's put this into the context of fitness, for example. So you should never have a goal to lose 50 pounds and just leave it at that. I'm going to lose 50 pounds and then Monday I'm just going to start. Why? Because it's too big. It's too big of a picture. And there's not enough detail. There's not enough specificity in this goal. What does that look like, right? Now, it's okay to make that goal, but if you don't break it down, it's going to be overwhelming. And after 1 week or 2 weeks, you're like, well, I've only lost a half a pound. You're going to get discouraged and quit. So you can take that goal, 50 pounds, and you want to break it up into a monthly goal. So if I have 12 months in a year, I'm going to divide that by 12 months. So that's going to equate to 4.2 pounds. Right, per month. Okay, what do I need to do to lose 4 pounds per month? Split that into 4. That means I need to be on a track to lose 1.05 pounds per week, like 1 pound a week. Now, then I can say, what does it take to lose 1 pound per week? And then I can look at my daily rhythms. I can use an online calculator to plug it all in. It's free, it's simple. Then if I look up my online calculator, I can see that I need to eat under 2,000 calories and do a 20-minute jog every single day. Now I know exactly what I need to do. If I can just focus every single day on like sub 2,000 calories, jog for 20 minutes, I know that once a week I can look at the scale and I should, in theory, of course, over the long haul, be losing 1 pound per week on average. Then after the 4 weeks are up, I can look at my scale weight after a month and I can see, oh, okay, I'm down 4 pounds. That will then inform my larger goal of saying, okay, well, I'm now on my way to complete this goal to see success in this area of losing 50 pounds this year. You see what I'm saying? It's reverse engineering. It's making a goal that lines up with something that's really important to you, and you reverse engineer the process. If you just say 50 pounds, it feels impossible. But if you break it down into jogging once a day and keeping your calories under 2,000, no, that's not so bad. You can stack those wins every single week and then stack those wins every single month. And by the time the year is over and you've lost the weight, you believe in yourself. You start to begin to believe that you will do the things that you said you would do. I love this quote from Bill Gates. I think it's Bill Gates. It's been attributed to different people as well. But anyways, a few different people have said it. And it's this: most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. That is very true. And I've seen that to be true in my life. I've seen that to be true in the lives of other men. And here's another interesting point. The most successful mountain climbers in the world take the tiniest steps, because those people who have tackled the most dangerous summits in the world understand that taking large steps engages your largest muscles, and it's going to lead to premature failure. So the key to getting to the top of the summit is by taking tiny steps one at a time, not big leaps. Dave Ramsey says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So that step number 1 is we fail to see success in these areas, or we fail to change because failure is just simply easier than success. Number 2, another one of the traps that we fall into is that we subconsciously limit ourselves, right? Now, this is a really cool concept that I want to unpack for you, or just a simple framework that you can look at your use, like a lens that you can use to look at your life. But really, from an early age, our environment shapes our mindset. Okay, our environment shapes our mindset. But unfortunately, from that young of an age, we don't realize that that couldn't be further from the truth. And the way it really works is that our mindset can shape our environment. Let me unpack that for you, okay? It's often our surroundings. It's the things that we're told by our parents, our friends, our school teachers that shape what we think is possible in our lives. So for example, when I was in high school, I was convinced that I was A, that I wasn't smart, B, that I wasn't creative, C, that I could never sing, for example, D, that I could never get a degree. I was absolutely convinced, for me, that being an automotive, like a mechanic, was the top shelf for me. There's nothing wrong with cranking wrenches. But the problem was with my mindset. I didn't want to do that, but I just thought that that's what I could do, that I couldn't do the things that I actually wanted to do. This belief was shaped by my environment. It was shaped by because of the things that my friends and that my teachers had said to me. Now, it took me years to rid myself of that mentality. I grew up 18, 19, 20, just kind of like doing that and just thinking I just could never do more. But once I understood this concept that I was allowing my environment to shape my mindset, for example, I was told that I wasn't smart enough to do these things, so therefore I didn't believe I could. I was then able to change my thinking to allow my mindset to change my environment. So then I thought, wait a minute, I am intelligent. I am gifted. I can sing. I can get a degree. And so I went ahead and went after it. I let my mindset change my environment. See what I'm saying here? So shortly after that, I made a shift. I went on to study classical vocal performance. I sang in German, French, and Italian, and all of the other genres as well, contemporary stuff. I minored in guitar. I ran a music studio. I ended up leading the music department in one of the largest churches in Canada. And how's that for a change? Yeah, it's very different than thinking, I can't sing, I'm not creative, I'm not smart, I'll never get a degree. I stopped believing an old narrative. And this is what happens, right? As children, the things that we hear, the things that are spoken to us literally shapes our thoughts, which shapes our futures. And said in a different way, from childhood, we let the results of life control our thoughts, but we should be making our thoughts control our results. I'll say that again. We let the results of life control our thoughts, but we should be making our thoughts control our results. You see, when life isn't going our way and we don't get what we want, it's kind of the same thing as blaming the temperature, but we fail to realize that we have the ability to reach out and change the thermostat. And people do this all the time. Now, why is this? It's because we're convinced that we can't do anything about it. So we don't. Because we are limiting ourselves because we deep down inside, we subconsciously think that we're not capable of it. Number 2. All right, let's move on to number 3. Hey, real quick, we're going to get back to the episode, but I want to give you a free gift today. So if you're here and you're listening to this and you have been having a hard time in your marriage, maybe you and your wife just feel like really great roommates. You haven't had fun in a long time. You're just kind of getting caught up in chores and the to-do list and dropping the kids off and picking them up. I've got something called the Roommate Remedy, which is a free PDF. It's a guide for you. It's 113 ways to have fun with your wife and spark intimacy again. And this guide is going to teach you and your wife, and going to give you a ton of different ways to have fun. So that's totally free for you. Listen, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to have the link in the comment section below. But if you're listening on audio, just hit up dadnationco.com/remedy for this free guide for you. Listen, I believe in the marriage model. I believe in you and your wife. You can do this. I'm rooting for you. All right, let's get back to the episode. So the number 3 trap that we fall into is that we are afraid of the unknown, so we begin to self-sabotage. Now, in his book, What Happened to You, Dr. Perry talks about how experiences, and in this case trauma, can shape our worldview. And he mentions that psychologically speaking, we are constantly looking for ways to validate our worldview. So anything that does not validate our world or come into alignment with our core beliefs is uncomfortable and it's destabilizing. So what do? We subconsciously look for things that will validate it and make us feel more comfortable. That's why not only do we not believe we can accomplish more in this life, but we actually subconsciously don't want to do it because it's unfamiliar and it's unknown. And this is one of my favorite quotes ever. It's by Virginia Satir. And she says this: "We feel better with the certainty of misery than the misery of uncertainty." We feel better with the certainty of misery than the misery of uncertainty. Some of us would rather just be trapped in a life of discontentment and worry and stress because that's what we know, versus taking a bold step into new territory and stepping into a new season of life that could bring breakthrough because we don't know what that life looks like. So subconsciously, we self-sabotage and continue to hold ourselves into those places. So for good or for bad, we are attracted to things that are familiar. You see, psychologically, we are drawn to what we know. And even if we had the discipline to put in the work, we have to psychologically make a shift from what we know, which is unhappiness, discontentment, etc., to the unfamiliar territory, being in shape, having healthy relationships, being wealthy, etc. But the truth is that we are actually drawn to what we know, even if it isn't a good option, because we are constantly looking for validation. This is why people in abusive relationships keep going back to the abuser. Right? In that same book, What Happened to You? Dr. Bruce Perry is having this conversation with Oprah, and she asks him a question and he answers, and this is how the conversation goes. She says, so if you come from an abusive background, you might be in a relationship with someone who is abusive just because it's familiar? Dr. Perry says, yes. In fact, if you get into a relationship with somebody who's not treating you poorly, you may find yourself increasingly uncomfortable. And then unconsciously, your mind might seek a predictable response. You might try to provoke a bit of a response, and you might say, well, maybe I'll do this and it'll really piss him off, you know? And then if that action elicits the behavior you're most familiar with, he gets angry and treats you poorly, then it can actually be validating. And then your worldview has been confirmed. And even though the result is chaos and conflict, it's comforting in the sense that it's familiar. Isn't that crazy? You see, from childhood, we've been forming narratives and beliefs about our world, and most of them were around our insecurities, free handouts, our hurt feelings, and it's destabilizing to do or believe anything that goes against our worldview. So subconsciously, we're always looking for ways to validate it, even though consciously we may want something different. So naturally, our eyes or our vision are pointed into the direction that validates the things that we are already thinking subconsciously. So for example, no one really likes the real me, so I can't be myself, or I'm not smart, or I could never be wealthy, or marriage is just a trap. You know, if you believe these things subconsciously, you're going to live out of those and you're going to self-sabotage because you're afraid of the unknown of what life could look like. All right. That was number 3. Number 4 trap that we fall into as men is this: we are waiting for motivation and lacking in discipline. This is a very common misunderstanding between these two words. So people ask me all the time, how do you stay so motivated? And the answer is I don't. In fact, I'm rarely motivated to do anything, but I am disciplined. And there's a big difference. You see, motivation is doing something because of how you feel, and discipline is doing something despite how you feel. In all the areas of my life, if I sit around and wait for motivation, most of the time it's not going to come. And occasionally I'll be motivated, but rarely, okay? So for example, I will rarely be motivated to do the dishes. I will rarely be motivated to get out of bed at 5:30 in the morning and journal, work out, read, whatever. And I do these things not because of how I feel. I do these things despite how I feel in each moment, because living a life of excellence demands that you experience these short-term pains for long-term gains. You have to die to your flesh daily. This is how strong, confident men live. However, there is a time and a place for motivation, but it is fleeting, so don't wait for it and don't miss it when it's gone. When you think about discipline versus motivation, I've talked about this in previous episodes, but when you're building a fire, for example, you can think about motivation as the kindling, right? These are the small slits of wood that get the fire going, but they don't last long. And then you can think of discipline as that big piece of birch log that you put in the fire after it's been going. You see, this birch will burn hot, it will burn slow, and it will keep the fire going for much longer. That's what you want. But sometimes you do need some kindling to get the fire going, and that's okay. Moving on to number 5. The 5th reason why so many men find it hard to change and the traps that they fall into is because their goals don't align with their core values. I talked a little bit about this in the beginning of the episode, but here's the bottom line. If the goals that we have don't light a fire inside of us, it's going to be almost impossible to get to the finish line. Any new habit, any new behavior, or new goal that we're striving for must be connected to a passion or purpose, like our purpose, or another way of phrasing it is you must be connected to your why, because our why is much deeper than our desires. I heard a quote a little while ago, your why power is much more powerful than your willpower, right? Love that. Our why is why we live and breathe. Your why might be to be a great father, to be a great husband, to serve others, to have an impact in this world. You know, some deeper things that resonate with you in your core. So when you think about the things that you want most in this life, are they connected to something deep inside of you? You see, if you connect your goals with something that resonates deeply inside of you, no matter what life throws at you, you will stay the course. For example, when I get up in the morning and I don't want to work out, I think about all the millions of men who struggle with illness and disease and obesity and cannot jump up and play with their kids. And this rekindles the fire to prioritize my health so that I can do what I want when I want with my kids, be it playing catch, going skiing, hiking, you name it. So connect your goals with your passions and your purpose, and you will exponentiate the chances of sticking with them. I love this quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. He says this, "He whose life has a why can bear almost any how." All right, we're wrapping it up here. So number 6, the last trap that we fall into as men when it comes to trying to change is this. We don't realize the importance of each tiny decision. You see, when it comes to decision making, every moment matters. Now, this is going to sound a little intense, but stick with me here, okay? The reality is no one is static. It is impossible to remain in stasis, okay? We are always changing. We are either expanding or we're shrinking. We're growing or we're dying. Every single decision we make, every situation that happens is changing us for better or for worse. They are propelling us forward or holding us back. So the question becomes, what decisions did you make to grow yourself today? Did you go to the gym today, or did you stay home and binge Netflix? Did you read some literature, or did you scroll on Instagram? Did you eat poorly, or did you eat well? What decisions that you made today, are they moving you forward or holding you back? And here's another sobering fact, is that indecision is still a decision. You are choosing not to do something, and that can easily be as catastrophic as choosing the wrong thing. You see, each and every day, every decision we make, you have to ask yourself, is this decision growing you or killing you? And be honest with yourself, right? So here's an exercise that I do, and then I talk with men to do as well, is when you're coming home from work and you park the car and you're preparing to go into the house and face your wife and kids. You don't know what's on the other side of that door, right? It could be great. It could be chaos. But in that moment, you have to ask yourself, am I going to communicate in a way that builds into my marriage when I walk through that door or pulls us further apart? Or am I going to show up for my kids in a way that draws us together? Or will I prioritize my phone and work or other things that will destabilize our relationship? And this point actually ties back to that original quote from Bill Gates that most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10. There's an incredible power in small, tiny, everyday decisions. They are important, my friend. They are important. So here's the reality, my friend. At the end of the day, we must realize and accept that there are no shortcuts in life. I want you to consider the farmer, right? Think about him. He plants his seed in the spring. He waters it. He spends months watering it and trusting the process, even though he can't see what's going on underground. But sometimes we're like the farmer that just goes in and digs up a seed because he's trying to see if it's growing yet. Don't be that farmer. Understand that the most admirable and noble pursuits take time and effort. There are no shortcuts to a better marriage. There are no shortcuts to getting in shape. There are no shortcuts to getting rich and these different things that people pursue. It's a universal law. Think about it. You take thousands of steps in a marathon before you get the gold medal. There's no magic pill for weight loss or muscle development. It's just time and reps. Even your muscles, they are grown slowly by being torn and rebuilt. That's how muscles grow. Your fat burns slowly by decreasing calories day after day. You invest and save thousands of dollars before compounding effect kicks in and you start acquiring wealth. Even we see it in nature. Even the caterpillar spends, a season in a cocoon before he becomes a butterfly, right? Great change takes time. And I don't know about you, but as a millennial, I'm going to speak to the millennials and maybe some Gen Zs who are listening, but it seems as though we have this embedded entitlement. I know that I did, and it took me a long time to strip my mind of that. But the reality is the universe or, God or whatever large entity you believe in doesn't owe you anything, and it or he is not against you, okay? You just simply need to put in the work in the areas you need to long enough to see some fruit come from it, right? I heard Pitbull say one time, it's funny that the harder I work, the luckier I am. He's being cheeky here, but what he's saying is that there's no such thing as luck, but that there's enormous value in simply putting in the work. And here's the last thing I'll share with you, and this is probably one of the most uncomfortable realizations that I came to, and one of my mentors talked to me about it. It's not going to make me popular. It may not make you like me more, but it's something that I needed to hear, and maybe, perhaps, you may benefit from hearing it today. But one of the biggest stingers is this: who you are has created the life you have. Who you are has created the life you have. Now, many people think it's the other way around, that the life we have created who we are, but it's not true. We choose who we are becoming. And who we are becoming creates the life that we have. So my question to you today is this: do you want to change? Do you want life to look different? And if you do, you have to try something new, because it was our thoughts and our actions that led us to where we are today. And so if we want to be in a different place, we need to change our thoughts and change our actions. We cannot get different results from the same actions. Another thing it kind of struck me when I read it was this: our life today is a result of the decisions you made 3 to 5 years ago, generally speaking. And so even in this moment, when you're hearing that, I want you to pause for a moment and think about the decisions you were making in 2019, that was 5 years ago. Think about those decisions. Your life today is a result of those decisions you have made over the last 3 to 5 years. So the natural next question becomes, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years from now? And if you know where that is, you need to make decisions today to create the life that you want to live in 3 to 5 years, right? So that's a bit of a thought exercise for you, right? If you want to, you can pause this podcast episode or take a moment tonight, grab a pen and write down, as you think about it, as you meditate it on, as you pray about it, whatever the situation is for you, whatever you feel like your life should look like in 3 to 5 years, think about where you want that to be, where you feel led for that to be, and then make decisions today to see you on that trajectory in 3 to 5 years. Does that make sense? Okay, as we wrap up this time, I've got 2 questions for you to consider today, okay? Number 1, I want you to spend time reflecting on the different goals that you have made in the past, but you didn't necessarily achieve. Think about the goals that you didn't achieve. You got them? Okay. Now, can you think of the reasons why you didn't achieve them? Number 1, were they too large, like unattainable? Number 2, were you waiting for motivation that never came? Or did those goals line up with your passions and your purpose and your values? Were they connected to your why? Or was the nature of this goal questionable? Was it moral? Was it admirable? All right. Think about the goals that you never achieved and why potentially you didn't achieve them. Number 2, I want you to think about the last 3 or 4 decisions that you made this week, or perhaps the lack of decisions. Were these decisions that you made growing you or shrinking you? Were they moving you forward towards your goal or backward away from your goals? So for example, did you choose to love your wife, to serve your wife, or to fight with her? Did you choose pride? Or did you choose to work out or sleep in? Did you choose to read or scroll Instagram, right? Did you choose to save that extra cash or spend it on something you didn't need? So there you have it, my friend. Those are 2 questions that I would love for you to consider. And I want you to consider the trajectory of your life, as I am doing this regularly as well. I ask myself these questions multiple times a year to make sure that I'm staying in alignment with my goals and where I feel led to be taking steps in life. So I hope that was helpful for you. I hope some of those traps are I hope they give you insights. And maybe you get some revelation from these so you can not fall into them moving forward. And so as we wrap up this episode, I want to take a moment to just tell you about our next episode, which I am so excited about. I'm going to be interviewing my buddy named Sathya Sam, and we are talking about porn. We're talking about pornography. That's right. I said the word porn. We're going to talk about the negative effects of it. We're going to talk about how it affects us psychologically in our marriages. We're going to talk about the porn industry. And Sathya actually shares some sobering statistics that's going to blow your mind. And lastly, he's going to share some real practical advice on how to get free from porn once and for all. I mean, the statistics around how many men struggle with porn addiction is astronomical. So you do not want to miss this episode. And that will be 2 weeks from now. And that leads me to my next point. I'm heading into a big race next week. And then in September, life is about to get real busy for me. So for a short season, I need to go to bi-weekly episodes. I know. I just heard you sigh and weep a little bit from wherever you're listening. I get it. I'm sad too. So how this is going to work, instead of these solo episodes where bi-weekly I'm doing some teaching, moving forward, each and every episode is going to have a guest interview. So no more of these solo episodes where I'm teaching for at least a couple months until things slow down a little bit. So I just need to create some margin in my life so that I can show up for my wife and I can show up for my son in this next busy season. So I appreciate your grace. I appreciate your understanding in me trying to do my best to lead my home and lead my family. But do not be discouraged, my friend, because I have some incredible guests coming up. Here are some of the topics that we're going to be discussing over the next couple months here, okay? Number 1, Chris from Protect Young Eyes is going to be joining us on the show, and he's going to be teaching us how to set up our home and our internet to protect our kids from digital dangers and pornography. I'm going to be talking with my buddy Mark Holman, who's a men's hormone expert, and we're going to be talking about the big T, baby, testosterone, and why we are losing it so rapidly and what we can do about it. They call it the mandemic. It's a real thing, you guys. Guys have lower testosterone than ever before. And so he's going to break it all down for us. Another guy I'm going to be connecting with is my buddy Travis from the Integrated Man Project. He's a well-known psychologist on YouTube. And we're going to be discussing how to regulate our emotions as men and how to recognize and control our emotions in the heat of the moment. We're going to get into it all. So it's going to be fantastic stuff coming up, you guys. These are just 3 samples of some great guys we're going to be talking with and incredible conversations that are coming up. So stay tuned in. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, if you haven't already followed the show on whatever platform you are streaming on, please take a moment to do so, because you will not want to miss an episode coming up. And hey, again, I say this often, but if this episode has impacted you, if this podcast has impacted you in a positive way, would you consider jumping on the streaming platform that you're listening to and giving us an honest rating? And if you really love me, give me an honest review about how this has helped you. And if you're watching on YouTube, just hit me up with your big takeaway. What was the trap that you fall into of the 6 that I shared? Did any of them pop out to you? And how are you going to prevent yourself from falling in those traps moving forward? Okay, that's all for me, my friend. I will see you in 2 weeks when we have that conversation with Sathya about pornography. Listen, have an incredible couple weeks. I am in your corner. I'm here for you. Don't hesitate to reach out. My email is mitchell@dadnationco.com, or you can check me out on Instagram @dadnationco, or you can check out my website, which I just redesigned, guys, and it looks so good. The website is www. Do people say that anymore? I don't know. It's just dadnationco.com. All right, check that out. I think you're going to love it. There's courses on there. There's free gifts for you. Bunch of cool stuff. So, okay, that's it for me. I'm done talking for reals. It's over. Okay, have a great couple weeks. I'll talk to you soon.